Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sandra D, where we journey beyond the surface to uncover the essence of living an authentic, affluent life. I'm Sandra D, your companion guide on this path of self-discovery and empowerment. Welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking with Sandra D. I have the honor of speaking today with Simon Sinclair, who is based in London. I've known Simon quite a few years now, probably going on 10 years. I think 2014 is when we first started conversing about real estate in London and abroad. And of course, most of you know I'm in the commercial real estate market as well as luxury assets. And Simon and I share a passion for such assets. But Simon is even a bit more extensive, and I will let him tell you all about himself. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, hi everyone. How you doing? So my name's Simon Sinclair. I've been running a funding platform that assists people in purchasing buildings, hotels, development sites all across the world. I live here at North Greenwich, which is the O2. So I'm right now at the Intercontinental. So behind me is Canary Wharf, where HSBC building, I'm actually selling that. It's 750 million, the JP Morgan building, and then you got Barclays. So this is what I do. So I thought I'd bring you here to see the background of London life and how it works. You know, the banking corporations are there. And
this is
my
district of
financial district, of London. But I live here as well. So I live, eat, sleep, breathe in the middle of it. So what I also do is I do mortgages, funding, and various loans for purchases of large acquisitions all across England. And I do Dubai, France, Switzerland, Gibraltar, BVI. So I'm doing a lot of tax-free and cross-border jurisdictional transactions. I also own financial services company, and I own a law firm recently so that I can carry out everything in-house. And I'm also the owner of a cryptocurrency gold-backed coin with an ecosystem that is going to completely revolutionize digital currency with assets included. So I've kind of took the problems of making money and I've created solutions, and I've been doing this for 25 years. So that's a little bit about me.
25 days old. You look like a baby.
I'm 46.
You're a baby.
So no one believes me my age. Everybody says I look 30, but I've got a 25-year-old daughter. She looks like my wife. That's what it is.
She's with you? Did you say she's with you?
Yeah, she lives with me. She's in the apartment now where she studies law. And she's actually the CEO of a multitude of companies I've got. Because of inheritance tax and taxation, I'm actually efficient. So what I do is in the United Kingdom, I do not tie myself to any asset so that my tax liability is efficient. And then everything is run by my daughters and family so I don't have to pay inheritance tax.
Oh, wow. I hope no one from the Home Office is listening to this.
It's a legal corporate structure that's allowed to be done. You can have UK companies, what's called a remuneration trust, and the trust, basically companies own companies, and you can declare it to the HMRC, and it's tax efficient. It's a legal way to wrap your assets in the United Kingdom, which the super rich know about, but it means that you don't have to keep leaving and going to Monaco or somewhere like that. You can actually stay here.
Right. So that's another conversation for another day, because that's a very depth topic in itself. So let's begin. So you are a solicitor, you're an attorney, and you cross-border transactions, and you're very active in the large luxury Class A office buildings. You said you currently have one of the buildings that we're looking at for $750 million in your portfolio of offerings, correct?
Pounds. Let me just correct you. I'm not a solicitor.
Dollars or pounds?
Pounds. I'm not a solicitor, but I'm a strategic mitigator. So what I do is people hire me to strategically plan their defense or their attack using the evidence, and then I give that to solicitors. Solicitors then go forward with my procedures of what they should do based on the evidence. And then they go after the client or whatever it is. So I'm hired for that. I'm currently doing a massive financial crime investigation case. One of the top 10 pension funds in England was accused of misconduct, but he didn't do anything. So the regulators have misconduct. So I'm involved in a case assisting with that at the moment.
So your academic background, now you did not go to what they call law school in the UK.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I've done business
school.
study. Yeah. So I've done a business studies degree in international business, and I have a qualifying law degree, full LLB. So I have been to school, studied it all and whatnot. I work with some of the prestigious chambers in London, so I give them a lot of work. But before giving the work, I charge for my admin services to strategically mitigate. So they're not having massive solicitor costs. They just go straight to the job, you know?
I do know. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you were able to share about your background. So let's get into the meat of this conversation. So you and I are in the same space. We interact with investors on a daily basis. And I believe you're also an investor as I am. And so the main topic for this podcast today is going to be how to hedge your bets, how to hedge your risk when you are developing your investment strategy. And one of the questions that I wanted to discuss with you is basically right now, hard assets are really the most attractive when you have chaos and in the environment. You have quite a bit going on. We have 2 wars currently active, very well known by the world. I mean, it's some of them, there are more than 2, but the most well known, Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Palestine. So that said, of course, there's always currency risk. Why do you think most people at this time should be focusing on hard assets?
So when you talk about risk is based on supply and demand, because if there's a high demand for hard assets, then your financial risk is lower because your demand is greater. Therefore, occupancy is a higher percentage. Now, if you're talking about non-hard assets and various investment strategies, let me give you an example. If you're selling a building over there for £750 million and no one really wants it, and one person comes along, there's not many who have that kind of money, but we're talking high asset risk behind me. If you look at a standard daily property, yes, residential property is a good investment hard asset if you're buying property and renting, because if you're getting the mortgage, your rental income can cover the mortgage, but your demand for these properties is high because people are struggling to find places to live. But the cost of living has risen. So where your risk comes in, you have to find your sweet spot. For example, there's no point getting £1 million apartment with 2 rooms. Your mortgage is £8,000 and you're trying to rent the rooms out for £4,000 each. Never going to happen. The average room price is in between 900 maybe to 1,100 a room. Everyone wants, because the whole point of them getting a room is they can't afford the whole house. And you've got this credit reporting structure in England where it's not good. If you haven't been here 3 years and you're on a credit report, it's hard to get. So the demand is high. So on hard assets, depends on the value of the hard asset, but the demand is quite high for assets, therefore eliminating risk.
So what,
but not fully, just
we're giving the benefits of a hard asset versus an equity, correct? Because there's nothing holding that equity. So I've always said that it's always great to get something that has an intrinsic value. I mean, you have land, you have real estate, you have metals, you have anything that you can hold. You know, you have gems as well. And now, of course, we can add commodities into that category as well. So when I say hedging the risk, I believe that when there are difficult times, you can always, more than likely, investors are going to lean towards hard asset versus equities. Would you agree with that?
It's a 50-50 because equity is also very good, because when I'm putting equity into a deal, I'm putting a charge on the value. So let's take a £4 million purchase. I put equity of 1 million, which is 25%. I raise the debt of 75%. I still own 50% of the company that's purchased that asset. So I actually own more whereby putting a charge. If I put 1 million, I'm down there on the contract for 2 million. Do you see what I mean? In the equity. Now, when I raise the debt, I'm the first charge. So if anybody messes up, I get paid first. So it's quite a safe investment, equity. Right. So I'm going to talk to you about family offices versus private equity.
So the equities that I'm referring to is really the stock market, publicly traded equities. So when someone is investing, a retail investor or an institutional investor is going to buy shares in a company, that's what I was referring to versus private equity.
Exactly. But yeah, of course. But buying shares in a company is still owning a percentage of the company with the value, with money. So at the end of the day, say you buy, I don't know, shares and equity, you're holding on still to the share of that company, the share price has the value. The ups and downs from it is where you're making the losses or the gains. But the truth is, there's always when you're talking stocks and things like that, there's always a 50-50 risk. You can't eliminate risk.
Sure.
All the be all and end all is when you're buying the private equity shares of a company and you're publicly traded, you have the risk of losing, but you also have the protection of the FCA and various government bodies assessing the risk for you and cushioning it. But let's be honest here, not everything is without risk. If you want to mitigate risk completely, there is a solution, which I'll come to in the second part of this. But as we were talking, you know, the two types. Do you want me to discuss family offices now?
Yeah, well, go ahead. This is your show.
So when you look at family offices have a long-term horizon. They're longer investments, allowing them to hold on to real estate during market cycles. So let me explain. You go and buy a house for $1 million, then it has a negative.
And so just let me clarify family office. I'm assuming everybody who's going to be listening to this podcast understands what a family office is. But just in case they don't, Simon, would you like to just in one sentence describe a family office?
A family office is a family that has inherited funds over long periods of time, and that's funds have grown to the point they're now in the family office and they were either earned by the family or their ancestors from the beginning. Yeah.
Generational wealth.
Yeah. So they created a family office. Now in that family office, they have an assessment person who can basically look at long-term investments. Now, if you bought a house for $1 million and there was a credit crunch and the house value became negative equity, let's just say 100 grand, as a family office, doesn't matter to you because you can just sit back and hold out on the asset through this downturn until it improves. Because at the end of the day, a house is a house. Whether it's here, there, and everywhere determines the value. For example, if I'm in London, it's $1 million. If I got the same house in Kent, it's 200. So to me, it's the same house. Just sit through the downtime and everything will improve. You also have a greater flexibility in investment strategies and your acquisitions can be more opportunistic. Your risk, family office tend to prioritize capital preservation. So it can be stable income producing properties like rental income. You know, that's quite important. What you need to do is do your due diligence on the tenant, know what their history is. If you're going commercial or residential, at the end of the day, if you own the building and your tenant is good or a management company or someone with a track record, then you're getting a good percentage. This then, under contract, eliminates a lot of risk based on their history of business and their turnover. Family offices can also maintain control over investment decisions, aligning with the family's overall wealth strategy. So if my family strategy is to do, buy more factories because we own factories that produce the clothes for Primark, then that's our strategy. I come together, we do it, and then we do it. I have a family office. My family is a family office. So I'm just one part of all of that. So family offices, that is, their funds are great. I would suggest the family office puts equity in so that they can step back and own, but don't have to get fully involved and manage the risk by going for good reputable companies who have a track record and also residential rental income, private rental sector. These kind of properties would be beneficial.
So now we're looking at different structures for investors. So you just discussed the family office structure. So now can you give me a little bit of comparison between the family office structure and the private equity fund?
So a private equity fund, they have access to capital. So it can be any private person, significant capital at their disposal, enabling them to invest in larger projects and diversify across multiple assets. With private equity, you will have a professional management team because they cannot afford to lose the funds in any way. So because it could be borrowed equity, so somebody's put the equity in, so they have to be deliverable, the project. So you'll have a management team that will fully due diligence the project to ensure that the profit is said what's going to be made and subject to signing of contract. That will be the main good thing on management of the money. They also have expertise in structuring deals and managing properties. For example, I take on private income. I then strategically look at the project and see what the financial returns would be. I then can manage that from start to finish with them legally, contractually, and technically regarding the whole ins and outs, including construction. So when I have a private equity guy come on, I get the private equity guy, I get the debt, I get the construction finance, I have the construction team, I put it all together, and then I have the exit strategy. So I produce all of that. Construction team are 5th largest in England, so their track record is fantastic. And we might carry out a 24-month project of building developments or whatever it is. I do have a list of what I've done, but I actually put all the pieces together with top firms like Gardner Theobald for cost consulting, Synergy Construction for the construction part. They built like hotels and residential developments. And then funding, I've got some of the top lenders in England. So then a private equity guy comes along with 1 million and I just package it all up and get the deal done.
So you just the capital stack. It could be a mixture, a hybrid of debt and private equity, correct?
Well, it has to be because private equity is only a small part. You only give maybe 25%. It's basically the deposit. When nobody wants to pay a deposit on a mortgage, private equity guy can come and give you that. Private equity gives you that. He's going to want 50% of your profit and his money back. Right. So they tend to have a shorter investment horizon, typically 5 to 7 years, focusing on maximum returns through property improvements and strategic exit. So buy a rundown place, pay and do it up, profit return, but you get your 25% back and you get 50% of the profit. Sometimes private equity get 70% of the profit because the person who's carrying out the deal isn't putting anything in. So it's called no skin in the game.
They become just a refer. At that point, they just a finder. They find the deal.
They just find the deal. They become the borrower. They take all the risk, put it on their head. The private equity guy's got no risk because he's got a charge on the property. Property's value double to what he's put in. So his money's safe. If the borrower messes up in any way, the building gets sold. Private equity guy gets his money back, walks away. Zero risk. It's better give private equity in onto someone else's head. They're taking the risk, you know?
So Simon, let's talk about deal size. Is there a big difference between the deal size that a private equity will take on versus a family office? I know family offices tend to be a little bit more conservative, would you say?
Yeah, because family offices are just families. They've got a little team, they're getting it in, but you know, they're not experts in all of this. Private equity funds, they're experts and they can't lose money for the investor because of regulatory bodies. So in England, there's FCA regulation. In various countries, they have it. So private equity have access to more money, but deal size, at the end of the day, let's just say 4 million, okay? 4 million to buy the site, 4 million to build the site, 4 million to profit. You got 12 million there, yeah? Private equity guy puts 1 million, debt is 3 million, 100% construction finance, 4 million. The 7 million is basically debt, 2 types of debt in construction and let's just say senior, I suppose. No, yes, mezzanine senior. Private equity is the 25% that's gone in. So only £1 million gone into the deal. 7 million is borrowed. Now this 7 million and this private equity have fees. So this 7 million then might have fees of another million. So let's just call it 8 million swallowed up in fees. Yeah. Then once the project is released an exit strategy, I would go to some of the top real estate agents in the world selling units. I wouldn't sell units. I wouldn't build units for more than £500,000 because they're very hard to shift when they're in the millions. So you need to really be in between 3 and 700,000, because a lot of investors purchase this from abroad, which gives them tier 1 investment visas into the United Kingdom. So you want, for quick selling and risk management, low risk, quick selling block. So 4 million could buy you 20 to 30 units to be built with the structure I've mentioned in an SPV, tax liabilities efficient, profit of 4 million, equity, everyone gets paid back. So the 8 million comes out the deal, pays back the 7, pays back the 1, pays some fees. You're probably left with about 3.5 million left over. That is then split under your negotiation of 50-50 or 50 with the borrower and the equity guy. The debt people have already took interest, which is swallowed up in the, I removed 500,000 for interest. So it was 3.5 eventually the profit. So if you then did a 50-50 deal, you'd walk away with 1.75 million on a 1 million equity loan where the borrower did nothing and he receives 1.75 million and a deal done. You could do this easily.
Win-win.
Yeah. So the more private equities that come to me, I have regeneration projects. So you come and put private equity, I piece the whole thing together, and in exactly the same way it can be 4 million or 50 million. It doesn't matter. You're paying 25% of the purchase of the asset. So that is what is required. I will do the rest, 75 construction, exit, and manage it. 24 months, maybe 30.
So basically, when they come to you, do they have a fixed cap rate that they're looking for? What's the range that's in the market right now? Asking.
You're looking at a return on investment. You would want to get around about 25%. So this is why I just call it a third. 4 million to buy, 4 million to build, 4 million profit. But it's never that way. It's always between 20 and 33% is the return.
That's quite good. And so are we looking at just the UK? Because I know you do quite a bit in the Middle East as well, Dubai to be more specific. So how does the in return on investment change as you shift?
The same. It's the same because it's all about the demand. Remember that. So when I go to Dubai, properties are selling constantly because everybody's after Dubai. So it's very easy if there was a piece of land to do a deal. But the thing is, Dubai land is being taken over by everyone. So you can't even get it right. After everything, floods, it was nothing. My friend was videoing me from the floods. It's just the news media hypes it up more. When you're there, okay, the road was flooded. It's not a big deal. They just built a drainage. They've got to build drainage. They've realized that now. But Dubai is one of the safest, most affluent cities in the world and tax-free, and everybody's going there. It's a much better way of life. It's 35% cheaper than London. Everyone thinks it's expensive. The taxis are the cheapest I've ever been in. And it's just classy. There's no violence. There's no crime. And people are not rude. There's no attitude. You just go there and you enjoy your life. And as long as you're living a good, great life and not doing criminal things like drugs or anything like that, they will leave you alone.
I used to think that was what you just described used to be the UK. That's why I moved there. Because I was living in Miami at the time before I moved to the UK. And before I moved to London, I said, oh, they're so polite. They don't have guns. They're so polite. Well, that failed.
That ship has sailed. I was born in London. London is not safe anymore. I've got kids who go out and I have to watch their location. People are drinking in public, getting on the public transport drunk. And it's just like, you don't get that in Dubai. Like people drink in the establishments, in the hotels. They're not on the street peeing in the corner after a pub night. You can't do that. So I find Dubai has an element of respect. People in England, they just don't respect the country or the rules.
I think it's just has to come down to morality. I think we've lost the family values that you and I know, I think are sort of being diluted at the moment, but that's not a conversation we need to have today. We could just move on.
No.
Tell me a little bit more about different markets that you operate in. So we've talked about 2 so far. So Dubai, I think you mentioned Cyprus as well, is where you tend.
From Cyprus, at one point was my biggest seller. Now, Cyprus is one of 2 destinations that are the most visited in the world, Spain and Cyprus, okay? So Cyprus, I worked with every single developer landowner on both sides of the island. And I have built and sold land with developments, with projects in exactly the same way. Now, what I was able to do in Cyprus is instead of putting any money in, I did an agreement with the landowner for a beach development with planning to build 100 units. I did a contract with him for £32,000 a unit. These were valued at 100K, but I got a deal from him at 32,000 for each unit completed. What I then did is I sold 80 units for 80,000 each, giving the client a 20 grand uplift in price because it was below market value. So even the customer bought it. I did a 2-year interest-free payment plan, and I did a contract where I can sell the units, like an option agreement, to sell the units for 80,000. I sold 100 units in 7 days. I sat in a hotel, put a newspaper advert. They were queuing up at my desk, but my staff was empty. They only wanted me. I did a 2-year interest-free, £80,000 for 2 years, and I provided aircon and electric and white goods and basic furniture pack so they could fully move in. I paid for that, and aircon. I paid for that out of my commission I made. I made 48,000 per unit, but 8 grand of that went to giving them. So let's just say I made 40 grand a unit times 80 over 2 years, and they were paying me every 3 months. I was getting that section of payment from the client. So every 3 months I was paying the developer. I paid the developer 1 year early. He finished 1 year early, gave me the rights to use the development with the clients. So I gave the clients their apartment 1 year before it was due. They was able to rent, and they were still paying off their interest free and getting everything. So it was a win-win. So these markets, I do this more abroad. In England, it can be done. But again, there's a lot more red tape in this country, a lot more regulation.
More difficult when you say that things are
difficult.
I guess the UK is just, in a way, it's good because I think it's just they're asking for more transparency. They want more information on the buyers, and
they want
more tracking.
to know
there's more tracking, yeah?
Who's spending what, because people are not paying the right taxes. So the government needs to know. Look at stamp duty. Every time you buy a house in England, there's a stamp duty tax. That house has paid tax hundreds of times. It's been sold, the same house. They're also getting taxed on your income, on your mortgage. So there's another question, another day.
Another question, another conversation, another day. So let's just finish up. So we talked about London, or the UK, more specifically London, because that's where you're born and raised and you currently have your office. And then Dubai, and then Cyprus. Anywhere else that you've done business in that,
I've done Bulgaria, Paris, Switzerland, Gibraltar, Dubai, India. I've done Cyprus, Turkey, England. So it doesn't matter for me because my background.
These markets for me, just to wrap up the video. Let's rate. What's the number one?
Yeah,
when you're talking to investors, what's the hottest market?
Okay, the hottest market right now is Dubai. But the thing is, again, it's all about supply and demand and political. If there's a political situation going on like Ukraine right now is in war. But if you did a deal with an owner in Ukraine right now and bought his property right now, you would get it for next to nothing. If you then held on to that, and when the war is over, you would then have a property worth whatever it is after the war is over. So strategic investments by looking at political situations is what governs markets, but also the demand. Demand is in Dubai, demand is in London, demand is in cities in America, but it depends on the financial pocket. Yeah, not everyone can afford to do whatever they got to do. So I'd say right now the best market to go into is Dubai because it's packed. It's very difficult to get properties and rent them. So I think that's a good market. And London is a good market along the rivers. But again, it's the cost.
Most important is what market's going to keep the value, right? It's either
exactly.
rise in value, like you talked about Ukraine, or it's just going to sort of even out and keep its value. Dubai, I have no doubt that it's going to maintain that value, which is what most people want to preserve their capital. And also London will went in Paris as well. But the EU is kind of on shaky grounds at the moment, wouldn't you say? Because of their economic burdens that they're very connected or very intertwined with Ukraine. So are you advising anyone to get into Europe at all?
Europe is a good investment because, again, it's demand. The more people want something, the higher the value of the price goes up. For example, I bought a penthouse for 50 grand. I sold it for 500,000. It's the same penthouse I bought. It was only because the political situation changed in the country and the demand grew, people came. So it was in my best interest to cash out, you know? So can I get a 50 grand penthouse again now? No. It was a 4-bedroom penthouse. I paid 50 grand for it.
And when was
I sold it for... This was in Turkish part of Cyprus before the Greek side joined the EU. After they joined the EU, on the Greek side, people kept coming to the Turkish side because it's not in the EU. So the demand grew for this area, and it has casinos and all of that. And you don't have to, there's not as much EU legislation. EU's got too much. So then my penthouse became, wow, it's in the center of a town that is, you know, not got all this jurisdictional legislation. So the price went up.
That's fantastic. Well, we've talked a lot on different markets. We've talked about jurisdictions. So let's wrap up this piece with what's your next big idea? What type of investors are you currently working with? Are we talking about institutional? Are you talking about individual, family offices? Who is helping you?
So I'm targeting everyone. I'm looking for private investors, family offices, anyone with money, to be fair, because what I'm offering now is a digital solution. So going back to Ukraine affecting European real estate market, there is a slowdown because obviously conflict and political negativity creates no demand, therefore negative equity. So until this political situation changes, you could try and buy in Ukraine.
Change anytime between Russia. Russia seems to be firm. Maybe after the US elections, we'll see a bit of change. But also in the UK, there's going to be change in July, right here, July 4th. That's interesting. I keep wondering why Mr. Sunak chose July 4th. I think he was sending a message to the United States, July 4th.
Well, independence, isn't it? So he's trying to be clever there. But the thing is, it's all a strategic gameplay. I think Ukraine is not going to last forever. It has to stop at some point.
I mean, I was speaking to a client of mine in Ukraine just an hour ago. And he's saying he's trying to see what we could do. I mean, they're still offering grain. Of course, they have quite a bit of grains to offer on the commodity side. But yeah, so you think it's going to wrap up by the end of the year?
Well, investors are increasingly focusing on more stable Western European markets, such as Germany, France, and the UK. France is getting the Olympics, correct?
Oh,
soon.
I don't know. I don't pay attention.
I believe some.
I was under the impression that they were going to have boots on the ground. Macron was speaking about sending troops to Ukraine. That's going to put a damper on their economy.
On the Ukrainian, but French economy is doing all right. You know, the people are still investing. There is buildings there, you know, so it's again, the demand. There is heightened interest in safe haven assets. Prime real estate in major European cities is the main focus as a safe haven. You would get construction delays, shortages on materials because of this political situation.
We saw it. Gas went up. A lot of grocery stores, everything on the shelf doubled. In the UK, it's been worse in the US. So I definitely see that this situation, this conflict with Ukraine is in Russia. It's going to last probably another year. I think
the attractive markets, Germany, despite the economic challenges, Germany actually remains attractive due to its economic stability, and it's got a robust real estate market. Nordic countries like Sweden and Denmark are also seeing
is it also you think, because I think Norway and Sweden just joined NATO. Do you think that's
Yeah, I believe so. That it's a good, stable destination. The UK's property market, particularly London, continues to attract international investors seeking stability and long-term growth. So that's what it's about. It's about stability and long-term growth.
And that leads to capital preservation. So let's wrap it up there.
Exactly.
So To the audience, you've got Mr. Simon Sinclair. Simon, why don't you give them your contact? How can somebody reach you if they need to?
I'm Simon Sinclair. My email is info@ssglobalwealth.com, and my number's 07860 648484. That's the best way to contact me. Just WhatsApp call or whatever from any country, and then we can discuss going further what is required.
Absolutely. And of course, to give this podcast a like, 5 stars on Apple and Spotify, but also share your comments. And if you have any questions for future, if you don't want to reach out to Simon directly, you know how to reach me. You can always put comment at the bottom of the podcast and video if you have any further thoughts or concerns. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you on this episode. And thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Sinclair. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sandra D and join us each week as we uncover stories of resilience, transformation, and the pursuit of your true affluence mindset.
And I won't sit down, won't back out. You can't ever shut me up.
Come and join me on this journey. I promise not to disappoint. Don't forget to make sure you like, subscribe, and share to be notified when a new episode is released.